Hi, everybody. Welcome. I understand there was a bit of a kerfluffle about watching the film. Apparently, there was such a demand that the hosting platform crashed, Kinema. And I want to reassure everyone that they will get a chance to see the film. You will get an email with a link to the film and to this panel in the next 72 hours. So you get to see it, and it's also going to be available on a number of other platforms, so don't be upset. We have a wonderful panel here tonight, and first I have to thank our sponsor, the incredible Northwestern Medicine Downton Behavioral Health Institute Bipolar Disorder Center of Excellence. And I also want everyone to know about the CREST organization's incredible Ask Me Anything event. It's an online marathon with bipolar experts. Started at 1 p.m. today, and it goes for another 48 hours. So the link will be in the chat. Obviously, if you have questions for the panel, please put them in the chat, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible. But let me first introduce our panel today. We have Dr. Jim Phelps, who has been a bipolar expert for well over 30 years. I hear you're semi-retired, but I see you everywhere I go in the bipolar universe. So you're still very, very active. And we have Holly Swartz, who is with the University of Pittsburgh Medical School. She's a doctor as well. And she is also president of the International Society for Bipolar Disorder, which is very prestigious. We have Dr. Crystal Clark. She is another bipolar expert at the University of Toronto, and she has a particular specialty in women and bipolar pregnancies, so that's fascinating. And then we have Bonnie Waltch, who is an award-winning producer, director, and writer, and of course she directed the film that you just saw. And Sara, you will recognize from the film. She's the author of the book that the film was based on, BrainStorm From Broken to Blessed on the Bipolar Spectrum. She is a force of nature, and she's also writer, producer of BrainStorm the Film. So that's who we get to talk to tonight. And I wanted to just start briefly with Sara and Bonnie and ask you, what made you decide to go from the book to the film? What was the impetus for that? Sara, you want to?
Yeah, jump in for a second. Terri, I don't know if you introduced yourself, but you've been such a huge inspiration to me. Terri wrote one of the original seminal memoirs about living with bipolar called Manic. And there's a quote there that really inspired me to press send and publish my book, as well as some other things that have happened since. Terri says, "The disease feeds on shame, shame feeds on silence, and I will not be silent anymore." So I thank you for that, and thank you for hosting our panel tonight. And now we've been at this for about 14 hours, folks, because we started at 7:30 in the morning Eastern time. So I've pretty much forgotten your question, Terri, but I think it was, how did we decide to make this into a film?
Right.
I'm going to hand that to Bonnie, but really, Bonnie and I go all the way back to teenagehood, and we're friends since college. And I had written my memoir. She had seen a copy of that, and she'll tell you more. But once I did decide to finally go public with this story, with the mission of saving lives and ending stigma and maximizing healing, I really wanted to shout that from the rooftops as far and wide as possible, and nothing like a film. So Bonnie's is incredible science documentarian, as you can see, and I'm just blessed to know her. So Bonnie, why don't you share where you come in this path?
Sure. So I read Sara's memoir, and I was really quite blown away by her story, because I didn't know that she had gone through all that suffering. She had kept it quite secret. And Sara approached me about doing a film. And at first I wasn't sure, because doing a film is a huge commitment of many years, many, many hours and years. And it can take years just to raise money to do it. But then I thought about it and I said to Sara, I'll do it, but we need to have it be more than just about you. We need to bring in other characters. I wanted to bring in all the other people that are in the film, and I wanted to do science stories, which, are not in her memoir per se. So we kind of took her memoir as a foundation and expanded it into 6 characters and science stories. And then we spent about a year, thanks to Dr. Holly Schwartz, president of ISBD, who introduced us to all her good friends. And we spent about a year talking to bipolar experts and getting the stories, figuring out what stories we wanted to tell and what we wanted to film. And then we spent about a year filming all over the country and in Canada and in the UK. So we had this big adventure of filming all our people. And then we discovered that we had shot way more than we could actually fit into the film. So we ended up crafting, thanks to my amazing editor, Rachel Clark, we cut this sort of introductory film, the one you just saw, as kind of our initial project, with more to come, more ancillary films to come with all the footage that we didn't fit into the main film. So we've got other projects coming down the pike. But I have to credit our director of photography, Nikki Bramley, and our editor, Rachel Clark, who we worked closely with.
Well, it's a multi-platform project, right? You have a podcast, you have the ancillary films, and so there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to get this information out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's terrific. And you didn't mention it will be on PBS.
Yes, we will have a broadcast.
So exciting.
Yeah, we're really excited. When Sara first approached me, she said, I want to make a film for PBS, because I just had a film on PBS that winter. And I said, whoa, you can't just make a film for PBS. You have to make a film, and then hopefully PBS will want it. So we've been very lucky that PBS does want this, and we will have a 1-hour version sometime in 2027.
That's terrific. Congratulations to both of you. It's very hard to take a book and turn it into a film. So that's just great. Let's talk about the film and some of the issues that were raised by it. I was particularly struck by the fact that the film makes so clear that bipolar is a very elusive diagnosis, that it often takes up to 10 years to get the correct diagnosis. And I would like to know from all of you, or anyone who has a thought about this, what can individuals or patients do to increase their chances of getting a proper diagnosis more quickly? Because obviously we can't just leave it in the hands of the doctors. It's not working. What can individuals or patients do to educate themselves? How can they best get the information that they can then take to their doctor and say, I'm thinking I may be bipolar? What are your thoughts on that? Jim, you certainly are interested in diagnosis, I know.
Well, actually, I thought I should let my colleagues, Holly and Crystal, give sober answers first, and then I'll give the hair-pulling out answer. I'm inclined to go in that direction after all this time. Holly, you're the president of the International Society for Bipolar Disorders. What would the ISBD say to this?
Oh, that's not Jim. Okay, fine. Look, I think first of all, I don't want to give up entirely on the profession. So I think part of this is making sure that we educate people who are seeing patients, and so we need that's a really important component of this, to make sure people. Professionals systematically screen for bipolar disorder in their practice. And it's often people, primary care doctors, OBGYNs, people who aren't mental health specialists, who are often the first point of contact for folks with mood disorders. And so that's a group that we really have to work more carefully with, to help people understand how to look for and screen for bipolar disorder. I think how does an individual who believes they might be struggling with bipolar disorder, I think what you then need to do, if you're not being heard by your practitioner, is maybe see somebody else. That's a possibility. The other thing is there's a lot of online materials, and Jim Phelps has a great website that he can talk to us about. which has a lot of materials available for educating yourself and for screening. And I think there are quite a few screening tools available online, and I would just go for it. Do your own self-screening, and then go knock on doors. I mean, you're going to have to advocate for yourself if you're not getting heard first.
Absolutely.
And you're entitled to do that. Absolutely.
That's a terrific point about Dr. Phelps' website, because it is just loaded with terrific information.
Yeah, Terri, if I could just jump in for a second, Jim, before you tear your hair out thing, is that I think most people who are still having difficulty, they don't know that they have bipolar disorder. They are experiencing and presenting as depressed, right? So they're constantly being misdiagnosed as depressed. As Jim says in the movie, 2/3 of the people down that spectrum don't show mania. We show up at doctors when we're down, right? So if you are a person who has experienced severe depression over and over again, everything that you tried is not working, SSRIs, standard antidepressants aren't working, consider that you may be having a bipolar depression on the bipolar spectrum, and seek that pathway. And we've had people say, hey, I advocated for that with my practitioner, and ask them to do Jim's diagnostic, and then you can get the right diagnosis. So, Dr. Phelps?
Well, thank you. And Dr. Clark, I'm going to point back at you to talk about where hormones meet the mood, your specialty, because that's a whole nother dimension of this. But I'll just say this film has done more and already than I've been able to achieve. Back in 2000, I wrote a website about bipolar 2, and then some publishing companies found it and said, hey, you want to write a book? So I wrote a book, and then I wrote a book for professionals. And then I thought the website is too long. I need to make it more readable and make it for primary care. So I made a new website. And then people don't read stuff anymore. They want a video. So I made a YouTube channel. And then this comes out. It's going to do a lot more than I've been able to achieve. So I'm very proud to be part of it and so pleased that you've done it. I will just point out that website called depressioneducation.org, the tagline is information before treatment. Information before treatment is mainly geared toward the people that Sara was just describing, starting with depression. How bipolar am I? Do I have enough bipolarity that I really need to think about being treated in that way and not with antidepressants in particular? So that was kind of my main message all the way along, and all these different media. And what I was not able to address in the detail that is required is the way in which this is different for women, particularly in the diagnostic phase and then also in the treatment phase. And that's where Crystal Clark has specialized. So Dr. Clark, could you take it from there?
Yes, well, we know that when the hormones meet the mood, that complicates bipolar disorder, whether it's pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause. And not saying we don't need more research there, but thankfully we have come a long way in terms of how to treat it and what treatment options can be optimized to help people stay well during these transitions, reproductive transitions as we call them. My particular research has been focused on pregnancy and postpartum management, because that is one of the most critical times in which we see an exacerbation or an increased risk of onset during pregnancy and postpartum. So, and unfortunately, a lot of misdiagnosis, because people come in with postpartum depression and they're in the depressed mood state, but actually they've had symptoms of hypomania that they didn't recognize as hypomania maybe before, or they've never really maybe had symptoms. This is the first onset, and now someone gives them an SSRI for treatment. And
right. Let me follow up on that, because I think one of the most critical insights of the film is its eradication of the misconception that you have to have these wild manic swings to be bipolar, and you don't. There's bipolar 1, which has those wild swings, and then you have bipolar 2, which has hypomania, which is a lesser form of mania. I know we talked about it in the film at length, but could could we just get maybe a brief description of the difference between mania and hypomania? Because I usually, when I go through hypomania, I have bipolar 1. When I go through hypomania, it's great. I love it. Why do we have to treat it?
I'll jump in and just say that I'm often talking to my patients about that. Why do we have to treat it? And usually my patients want it, those that are coming in, they want it treated because they don't like the crash, the depression that comes after it, or the mixed state, the irritability or agitation that comes after it. And they dislike that more than how great they feel when they're hypomanic.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it's the fall off that is the worst part then, the disruption in the mood. Sara, do you find that to be true as well? That your hypomania is not fun? Or
one of the things I learned from the research in this film, and from Roger McIntyre says it as well, is that I think no two people have the exact same experience with bipolar. Mm-hmm. And I personally haven't had that because I sort of tend to be high energy. We have a family trait that's kind of high energy. And so when I learned this term from you, Terri, euthymic, when my mood is even, that feels good to me. It's so much infinitely better than the hell of depression that amen and hallelujah. So I feel like I can keep a steady state of positive energy and stability doing the medications that I'm on, plus a lot of work that we'll get into probably in a minute that comes from Holly's work around circadian rhythm stability that's in the film, and all the good practices of steady behaviors that we do to keep that going. But
okay, so the salient point really is, if you are having mood swings, you should bring this up to your doctor. Is that correct? That's what you should be. That's maybe something you can bring to your doctor, and they can then diagnose, hopefully correctly.
Indeed, Terri, thank you. I think we could even say, symptoms of hypomania can be so subtle, and they can be so like just having a good day. Why would anyone remember them as like not normal? Right. So trying to detect bipolar by looking for hypomania, even though that's officially the diagnostic manual's way of doing it, there are 4 other things to look for that are in some respects more powerful because they're more straightforward. They don't make a diagnosis, but they suggest it. And they are an early age of onset of a first depression. So Sara's experience, Molly's experience, probably most of the people in our film's experience, including even earlier. So early age of onset of depression, that's a bipolar marker. It doesn't mean it's bipolar. It just raises the probability that could be so. The second one is family history, as was discussed very well in the film. The third is what we call course of illness. How cyclic or episodic is it? As you were pointing out, Terri, it's when it's recurrent that is another bipolar marker. And then lastly, adverse reactions to antidepressants. They can be transient, they can be very brief. That's suggestive. When it's more pronounced, like, whoa, man, what happened when I took an antidepressant is a stronger marker of this bipolarity. So when you put those all together, we have other ways of recognizing bipolar, not just hunting for hypomania, where you might really need my lenses said to be the bipolar lenses, like everybody seeing through these lenses has bipolar disorder. Instead of trying to find the lenses that will help you find hypomania, look for those other 4 things is another way of approaching this diagnosis.
This is the kind of information people really need to know so they can take to their doctors. And I just want to throw in a term real quickly, white coat worship. I feel that a lot of people that I have met through my recovery journey are afraid to talk to their doctors in between appointments. They're afraid to tell them they're having bad side effects, or they're just not feeling good enough. How do the doctors here feel about patients being more proactive, calling you, after an appointment, telling you how a drug's working? What is your feeling about that? Yes or no?
Absolutely. I actually tell my patients to do that. Let me know how it works. I'm going to see you in a week. If something happens before then, And as we're making adjustments, I encourage them to let me know what's going on, because the last thing I want to do is lose the rapport and the trust, and then to get scared of treatment altogether, because because it's not a one size fits all. We might not land on the right treatment for them with the first try. So we want to have an ongoing partnership in how we're managing the illness and getting them to their best self.
That is a lovely answer.
Partnership. Yep.
Partnership. Yeah.
I totally agree. Although I do recognize that in a lot of our healthcare systems, they're very overwhelmed and understaffed. And so there's always going to be somebody available for between visit contacts. It may not be your doctor. It may be that you have to reach the person on call, or it may be the nurse in the practice who's fielding calls. That shouldn't dissuade you from reaching out. The information, even if you don't have immediate access to your own doctor, and that's true in especially large healthcare systems, there's always ways of taking care of people between visits. That's actually part of medical care, and that information will get back to your primary prescriber. And I think it really is important, again, to advocate for yourself and get that information to them, because that's really useful information for your care.
So it sounds like the doctor will not be mad at you, is the answer. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Let's just circle back to the diagnostic real quickly, because I know we want to take audience questions soon. People are so afraid sometimes of the bipolar diagnosis. And I think the film said something like bipolar has a PR problem, which I love. But as the film also explains, it can have these unexpected, amazing benefits. For me, I credit my creativity, my increased empathy, my resilience, just a host of things that I would not have discovered without bipolar. And I'm curious, what are the upsides of having bipolar? Sara, what do you think?
Well, first, just to shout out to Terri's creativity. Everyone should watch an episode on Modern Love on Netflix that Terri
wrote on Amazon Prime.
On Amazon Prime, that Terri wrote, called Dating While Bipolar, maybe. And it's about Anne Hathaway plays a version of Terri. It's a very powerful piece. We didn't think that anybody who didn't live with bipolar could get that right, but she does an amazing job.
Thank you.
I think the upsides we talk about, Sherry Johnson talks about in the film, about creativity, about entrepreneurship, about charisma like Greg Martin, about a kind of fearlessness. Let's take the hill. I didn't know that this was part of my personality. And people say, well, look, you're making this movie. So apparently not everybody would do that. To me, I thought that was normal. But there is a kind of an edge towards risk-taking and possibility, and let's try this, I think, which is, a positive thing. And I know that people say they fear taking medication because it will make them less creative. I don't know what your experience is, Terri, but I have not experienced that. I think Sherry Johnson's piece about Schumann is really interesting, that he thought he was being more productive because you're getting more notes on the page, but his best work actually was when he was even. So I think that we still we can stay healthy and stable and calm and happy and be creative as we live with this condition. Yes.
And I believe Sherry, that's what made it into the film, the Schumann story, which is a great story. Yeah. But she did talk about other studies that showed that people may think they're more creative and more productive when they're manic. But it turns out that they really aren't. I mean, they may think they are, but when they're in a well state, they actually produce better work. And she's done studies that show this.
Right. Well, you need to be able to relate to an audience if you're going to really create great art, and you need to have that stability. At least that's what I've certainly found as well. Yeah. So I think we should probably segue over to audience questions now. I'm sure people are dying to ask these incredible doctors and Sara and Bonnie some questions. So
and we should point out, if questions go unanswered, this is the Ask Me Anything phase online. So you can go to Ask Me Anything World Bipolar Day, and we'll put that in the chat to how to access the AMA Day, so that there are 70, no, I think it's now over 80 bipolar experts with lived experience, as well as trained professionals answering questions. There's so it's a great place to go for questions to be answered for those that we don't get to here.
That's a great point. Thank you.
And Hannah will put that link in the chat.
Okay. And to access the audience questions, are they in the chat now?
Backstage. If you look up in the
backstage chat.
Backstage.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Great.
I saw one go. Shout out to our nurse practitioner colleagues who sometimes have the opportunity to spend more time with people than physicians, depending on how the system is organized. And they're a very important part of the team. There are psychiatric physician's assistants now. And some of these people have such an interest in the mood disorder territory, as I ended up having, that they become really well-trained specialists. So there's a whole team of people out there, in addition to us psychiatrists, who become part of the team of treating bipolar and very able at it.
And let's not forget peer support groups, which have done an amazing job. They're online, they're free. You can go to the National Alliance for Mental Illness, NAMI.org, or the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, DBSA Alliance.org. Knowing that other people feel the same way you feel is so empowering and has been a really, really important part of my recovery. So yay to peer support. All right, questions from the audience. Let's see what you've got here. I'm in perimenopause and have BD. I feel that I'm not being taken seriously by my healthcare team and that it's being seriously mishandled. Any advice? Getting back to patient advocacy here.
Yeah.
Seems like this is a Dr. Clark question.
Yes. I would echo what Holly said earlier, in that if your team is not listening to you and you are able to, kind of explore other teams, or other mental health professionals, gynecologists as well, because this is where we really got to think about how to manage hormones as well as adjust medications in perimenopause. And you really need someone who's willing to, again, partner and journey with you. So if your team is not listening, I would definitely try to get other inputs, through other resources, as well as trying to find other medical professionals.
And when you say hormones, you don't just mean like menopausal hormones. I mean, there's the thyroid influence. People need to get their thyroid in order, right?
Yeah, it should be a whole workup, and that's where both the psychiatrist and the gynecologist should be doing more lab testing and just checking for all the things that could be going wrong. Definitely thyroid is one of them.
I think the message here.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking over you.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that the message is if you don't feel like you're being cared for properly, you don't have to. I mean, you need to listen to your inner voice, right? If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And so if you can advocate for yourself and explain why it doesn't feel right. But at the end of the day, if it's not right, there are, fortunately, we live, at least in the United States, in a relatively resource-rich environment. There are other options, other people that you can seek out to make sure that you're heard. It's important that you feel heard. You should be heard.
I think a lot of people.
I just want to say, Terry, sorry, that this is one where my hair's on fire, because I did have a serious relapse at perimenopause and no one knew. Really? None of my psychiatrists understood. The primary care didn't understand. It just wasn't out there. This was like in the dark ages of 10 years ago. But it really is a thing. There's data and research and all kinds of information to prove that at perimenopause, Crystal's nodding her head, there's a big risk of relapse. And so definitely advocate, go to your OBGYN, go to your psychiatrist. I mean, even I got to out you for a second, Jim, because Dr. Jim Phelps, who I revere as the greatest, along with Crystal and Holly, the greatest mood disorder doctor out there. And he to his credit, said to me, I had no idea, I wasn't trained about this, that there could be a relapse at perimenopause. So it's really poorly understood, but it happens. So please go advocate. The people in UK are ahead of us on this. There's an organization called Bipolar UK, and they've done some great webinars on this with a woman named Claire Dolman. We'll put her in the chat as well. And we did a podcast with her, Jen. So, okay.
And this is what our next film is going to be about, with Dr. Clark as one of our star experts. About
how exciting.
In fact, we're going to steal your title, Where the Hormones Meet the Mood.
I love that. Oh, it's so important. The next question is very interesting. My future children will have a genetic risk factor for bipolar, given that this person and the paternal grandmother have it. What are the things you would do to protect your child growing up, to prevent or protect them from experiencing the downside of bipolar?
So we know, and the film talks about this quite eloquently, that bipolar disorder is a heritable disorder, but it's also triggered by environment, right? Mm-hmm. Just because someone inherits the vulnerability to bipolar disorder isn't necessarily going to guarantee that you're going to develop it. On the other hand, because it's this interaction between biology and environment, you want to help your kids be as resilient as possible. And so I think teaching them some of the strategies that we use to stabilize the biology of bipolar disorder, we typically say it's good for anyone with a brain, like pretty much anybody, but maybe especially so for people who have that extra vulnerability because of an inherited risk. And so that's also in the film too, but things like, a really regular sleep cycle and a really regular eating pattern, regular exercise. Absolutely no one should be on screens at night. Bad. We're doing this bad if you're in the East Coast right now. Protecting our brains from blue spectrum light at night. So there's lots of things that are just healthy. These are, just like your kid, other health promoting behaviors. A lot of those health promoting behaviors will offer some protection against bipolar disorder, we hope, and are things that you can sort of arm your child with going into the world. I think the other thing, and I guess other people here are obviously going to have things to say about this, I think modeling for them a healthy respect for bipolar disorder, teaching them over time, amber glasses, what to look for. And, I think there's some strength from that. If you've got a family that understands and is willing to find healthcare for somebody with bipolar disorder, this is something that can be modeled. And should they develop bipolar disorder in the future, they'll be well armed to know what to look for and where to go for help.
And the earlier the intervention, the better, right? Yeah. Let's see, one person here has asked, can anyone ask for a systematic screening, and who should they ask? Basically, what advice would you give to someone struggling to advocate for themselves? And I think that's sort of a theme of this panel, that self-advocacy is essential. But can anyone ask for a screening for bipolar?
I wanted, because I'm recognizing we are global, and everyone does not have the American healthcare system. And even when I think about the Canadian healthcare system, sometimes it's not easy to just switch providers. And but I would add to some of the things that's been said earlier that reading more, if you're suspecting that you have symptoms of this illness, reading Sarah's book, BrainStorm, or Terri's book, or, just getting the language, because sometimes what psychiatrists and other medical professionals are trying to use to make the diagnosis is the insight. And sometimes it's hard to, you're feeling something, but it's hard to articulate exactly what is happening. And so learning and from those with lived experience who have a diagnosis, who have insight into their illness, might be a way to start to advocate and say, hey, I actually, this resonates with me. I have these symptoms, I'm having this experience. And And that language might help the medical professional understand, okay, this is what, this is bipolar disorder, in the event that you can't switch. Otherwise, again, what Holly said, we're like, get another doctor, get another medical professional. You want someone who wants to work with you.
Right. Well, I think both Sara and I love that answer. There are a lot of books on bipolar disorder. There are so many out there, and knowing that you're not alone will change your life. This film will change your life because there are so many people struggling with this illness, and you need to have the vocabulary to bring to your doctor, and that's what.
I think Terri froze for a moment, at least for me. Jim, why am I wearing these amber glasses?
The amber glasses. Why are you wearing them?
Why am I wearing the amber glasses, Jim?
Because all that work from Holly Schwartz about the importance of the circadian rhythm, there's only one wavelength of light that sets your circadian rhythm, and that's blue light. You can block blue light and trick your brain into thinking that you're in the dark. You can block blue light with amber lenses, as being stylishly modeled by Miss Sara Schley.
And these cost me $20. Jim said you got to get them. So basically, it's a way to cheat to read off your iPhone right after 8 at night. But people say that, but my iPhone says it's in night mode. Is it true?
It doesn't block enough blue. It blocks down some, but not enough. And you can tell you can still see some blue there. But when you put on those amber lenses, you can't.
That's great. All right, I'm going to apologize for this because I'm going to ask you all the hardest question I ever get asked. This is from an audience member. What can a parent do when their adult child does not recognize their illness? What do you do when someone won't get help when they need it? I hate that question.
I kind of like it because I think it's an opportunity to ask, okay, so they're refusing help. Well, why? What is it that makes that notion of help scary to them? And the more that we can understand that, the more the potential avenues open. And I think one of the biggest things that contributes to that reaction is a fear of the, I guess, three things. Generally, the reputation, which we're now trying to do stigma busting here with this film. Secondly, that the treatments are often thought of as being really difficult or dangerous or make you feel terrible. And actually, there's some truth to a lot of that. Often people will have experienced it, a really bad reaction to a medication. Having a general fear, I guess I'm thinking that's enough. So if it's fear, we can address that with learning. So offering, is there anything that we can help you learn that might diminish that fear? I think it's the starting point sometimes, not always, but sometimes. I have a longer answer, but we're running out of time.
There is a book called I Am Not Sick and I Don't Need Help that's been helpful for some people. It's by Xavier Amador, Amador. He has a procedure for dealing with people who don't want to recognize their illness. But it's a tough question and it's a tough situation. Do the other doctors have any thoughts on that? What do you do when someone won't get help?
I mean, I think don't give up, right? So, two things. Get some help for yourself because this is a really hard position to be in. And so, it's kind of like the metaphor of when you're in an airplane, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself. You can help somebody else. You got to make sure that, you're these are usually marathons, not sprints, that you can get through this. So you want to make sure that you get enough support for yourself. And then you want to come alongside the loved one that's struggling, and, recognizing that they might not be ready yet, and yet giving the message that you're still there for them, and that you're not giving up. And it probably is going to take more time than you wish it would. But the message that you're giving is, I'm there for you and I will help you when you're ready. And so I think that that's also really something powerful that you can do as somebody who has a loved one who's just not ready yet to get the care that they need.
Oh, that's very moving. Thank you. Crystal, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would just add, I think as medical professionals, we also have to be patient in that journey as well. I've definitely had patients come in who have, who I know have bipolar disorder, but they're not ready to accept that. But they know something's wrong, and it might be a year or two, literally, before they have enough insight or an interest in trying a treatment for bipolar disorder specifically. And working through that. So it's, there is a lot of education and being patient and just, being supportive.
Yeah, education seems to be the key here. And look what's happening. I mean, World Bipolar Day is becoming a big thing. So that's very exciting. Thank you, Sara and Bonnie, for bringing this to the public, because I don't think bipolar 2 has been recognized as the, scourge that it can be. It can really, really change your life to get treatment, as we've seen from Sara. Yeah.
Many people.
How are we doing on time? Do we have time for one more question?
Time to wrap, my friend.
Yeah, I was afraid of that.
On the East Coast.
Well,
Bonnie, do you want to thank our sponsor, or was?
Yes,
Terri will thank. I also want to give a shout out to Hannah Krantz, because she's been our amazing helper. She's just been doing such a stellar job and has been juggling a million things and troubleshooting all these issues we had tonight. And I just want to thank her for her incredible hard work.
Yes.
And Terri, please thank our sponsors.
Yes, I mean, there are a lot of sponsors, but let me please just reiterate the Northwestern Medicine Downton Behavioral Health Institute Bipolar Disorder Center for Excellence. It's a mouthful, but they do amazing work. And I really want to thank our panel. You guys, Dr. Clark, Dr. Phelps, Dr. Schwartz, thank you for your wonderful compassion and expertise. And Sara and Bonnie, thank you for bringing hope and clarity to what's an often misunderstood and stigmatized condition. And I'm sure other viewers will be as moved by this film as I am. And I look forward to seeing it in 2027 on PBS. So thank you especially to everybody who joined today. Spread the word and take care of yourself as well. It can be a tough condition, but as Sara and I can agree, I mean, you can live a fantastic life with bipolar disorder. So thank you, and I think that's